Well, we're pivoting back to AI. We have the host of the Latent Space podcast. I first found this fellow because he put out a fantastic interview with George Hotz, one of my favorite people in the world, really. And we're excited to talk to him. I want to get his take on AI 2027 and a whole lot more. But also, I think he has a little bit of contrarian take about whether or not you should traffic in these forms of, AGI is 2 years out. So I want to hear from him. Welcome to the studio. How you doing?
Morning. Hi. Doing great.
Do you want to give a brief introduction in your I know you as the host of the Latent Space Pod, but in your bio you have a number of different affiliations. How should the viewers think about you?
Someone with basically ADD and too many projects.
That's great.
But yeah, I'm Shawn or Swix.
Yeah.
I started the Latent Space podcast to cover the AI engineer field, which I helped to popularize. And I also run the AI engineer conference, which is happening in a couple of months. Primarily, I think the one in New York that I did helped to kickstart a lot of the recent MCP hype that you might have been seeing.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I'd love to get into that.
we can get into that. And I think, yeah, what you were referencing just as we came in
Yeah, please.
was, the news of the day, right? Like AI
Yeah.
2027. I think very important to at least try to go through the thought process of like what might happen. But this is essentially fan fiction,
Hmm.
right? Like we don't know exactly what will happen. We've been getting various forms of AGI as 2 years away for quite a number of years now.
Hmm.
And I think part of why I started the AI engineering um, sort of trend is to try to get people towards building more things instead of just speculating
Hmm.
on what the big powers that maybe will do, because you have a lot more agency in your life to do things if you just focus on what we have today. Granted that AGI is very big, and like I do take that seriously.
Yeah, of course. Well, let's go through some of the things that you do think are worth building. I want to get into agents, and we've been asking a lot of people, when can this thing book a flight for me? But maybe we should start with MCP. Can you just give us an overview? I saw all the viral posts, a lot of debate over, is this just an API or is this something more important? All the leading labs are putting out papers and implementations of it. Can you give us your kind of MCP, explain like I'm five for dummies, and then maybe take me through a few of like the implications for the market and the different AI labs?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you already had like a couple explanations, so I don't know if I'll be, adding a lot here.
Sure.
I'll just give you my version, and then we
Yeah,
can
please.
riff on that. So MCP is a protocol for a lot of different integrations into agents,
Hmm.
and I think that there have been many attempts, a lot of different configurations of I will include the framework. I'll start from the
Yeah.
gateway. I'll start from the integration side, whatever.
Hmm.
But this is the first one that was very seriously put out by a big lab.
Hmm.
We actually were the first podcast that the MCP creators uh, did an interview on, and that's we just released that yesterday.
Amazing.
It's shocking how impactful this is for
Hmm.
this effectively the side project of two guys.
And this
Um,
is and they work at Anthropic, is that correct?
They work at Anthropic.
Got it.
Yeah, over in the London office. Yeah, you can check out latent.space/MCP. You'll see it.
Cool.
And yeah, so I think effectively, maybe for the normies, whenever you see these like at symbols, like when you're in a chat and you want to add something and you want to include a tool, you want to
Mm.
include any kind of agents or any kind of subsystem like a Notion or
Hmm.
Zapier or what have you. For developers, we will use things like Sentry, Microsoft Copilot, and GitHub just put one out today.
Hmm.
And I think Google announced something. I don't know what they announced, but they announced something. But basically, the entire industry
Always
is.
the case with Google. They put out something, but I can't find it.
I mean, there's just a lot, right? Like
Yeah, there's a
today,
lot.
they just announced 2.5 Pro pricing.
Okay,
Uh, so my viral tweet of the day, I always have like one a day,
let's
is
go.
that they now completely own the entire Pareto frontier of all labs. Like they
Really?
had the smartest and the cheapest and the most
Wow.
sort of cost-effective
Ooh,
Pareto frontier between.
very
Um,
cool.
which is incredible. Anyway,
Yeah,
coming back to MCP.
sure.
So each like this is what we call in the industry like a M times N problem,
Hmm.
meaning I have this one app. I write integrations for this one app. So, but then when I move to a different app, I have to rewrite the integrations again.
Hmm.
And obviously that's annoying. Obviously we want to share integrations. Obviously, like the open source community can improve better things better together instead of individually. And we should stop competing on these things and start competing on other better things.
Hmm.
And it just took a player like Anthropic to put this forward, and this is the one that got enough momentum. So practically for what the normies would, sorry, I don't know if it's derogatory to say normies, but not
No,
people who are
it's
not
fine.
in the mix every single day. Practically what's going to be is that you're going to be much easily able to add integrations to basically anything in any agent.
Hmm.
And that will, at least help you get use out of them faster just because individual companies are not writing their own integrations anymore. Basically, everyone's onboarded to this ecosystem.
Yeah, I think normies is it can be a pejorative when it's used as a blanket term, but I think everyone you might be a normie in defense technology.
Mhm.
A defense founder might be a
Yeah.
normie in AI technology, and that's fine, and that's why we have a variety of guests on the show. With regard to MCP, the most basic question is like, how is this different from an API? Zapier already exists as a binder between APIs, and also like we're hearing coding agents getting better and better. The Devons, the cursors, like why is it so hard? It feels like AI is incredible at writing code. Why can't I just use AI to say, hey, I want to interface with this API. Just go figure it out every time you compile the code. If the API changes, figure it out and reverse engineer the API. There's docs out there. Here's kind of the general idea of what I want. Go figure it out every single time at runtime.
Yeah, I mean, the second question is easier to answer than the first.
Sure.
Mainly because it's probably easy to figure out common implementations, but then you won't tackle the edge cases or the bugs that happen. And obviously, it's also very inefficient to keep coming up with a new implementation and integration every single time.
Sure.
So when possible, actually, it's better to not use AI if you have the option to not use AI. Like AI is meant to be a plug for things that don't exist. But if you do have the integration that's written and battle tested by like, thousands of people before you, why would you not choose that? Like only if your needs are not being met by that integration, then go ahead and write your own. And the cost of writing your own has come down a lot, right? Which is also very interesting from the sort of open source ecosystem point of view, where people are now vendoring a lot of their libraries that they would typically import without thinking, just because they're like, oh yeah, someone's written this for me and it costs too much. Anyway, so let's come back to the first question on how does this compare with an API, and that's why developers hate MCP. They're like, this doesn't do anything over Open API, and we asked them. We asked the authors of that question point blank on the show, and basically it reifies concepts that would be undifferentiated as far as the normal API spec goes. So, for example, there's concepts like resources, prompts, tools, sampling, routes, and transport in MCP, and like those are basically special subclasses that are treated differently in the MCP environment, whether or not they're controlled by the model versus the application versus the user. So they are very, very distinctly parceled out the permissions and the intended roles of each feature. So I would say it's kind of like a layer over APIs that have become more AI native, and that's made it. Anthropic is at least saying that this is much easier for us to use, and you're going to build much more effective agents if you do this.
Got it. Yeah. Sorry.
Do you feel like MCP will, massively accelerate the creation of agents that become a very active part of our lives on the internet? It was we were at Y Combinator demo day, and there was a lot of AI agent infrastructure companies. There was probably more AI agent infrastructure companies there just in one demo day than AI agents that I've sort of tried to use, right? So it's like everybody wants to do picks and shovels, but we actually just need we need more sort of shots on goal at potentially the harder problem, which is just reliable agents.
Yeah, I fully agree with that actually. So it's actually very depressing. Like an AI agent infrastructure company is what you do as a developer if you have no other ideas. So that, I mean, YC should take that as a warning sign that their people are not going after the right path. MCP makes integrations easier, period. right? What you do with those integrations, what problems they solve, that is still an open question. But yes, for sure, the ecosystem is about to get a lot stronger because we're now no longer rewriting things. We're converting M times N combinatorial explosion problems into M plus N,
Mhm.
where you're just write every integration once, hopefully. I mean, maybe twice. But yeah, I actually I like the opportunity to address this because I think people think of me because I wrote the article on why MCP won, and everyone's like, you're just a show for MCP. I like the opportunity to just say like, no, like this is very good. But it's a protocol. Like, did you get excited when REST was invented? No, like you got excited
Mhm.
by all the applications that REST enabled,
Yep.
Yeah.
and those are going to come down the line. And you're gonna, but I think like the normal consumer like should just be really happy that like these high quality integrations are now going to come a lot more out of the box than you waiting like 5 months for your favorite app to write the integration for your favorite thing, you know?
Yeah.
So your agents are
Do
going to
you
be able to do a lot more things, but I think the top agents like the Sierras of the world, they still want to own the end-to-end experience and they
Mhm.
will use MCP, but they don't necessarily like their life or they're not really like depending on it, you know, like
Mhm.
it's not like life or death for them. Like it's still on you to build an agent or a product or solution, whatever, that solves a problem your customers need, and that doesn't go away.
Mhm.
Yeah, what's your thesis on, the do you see a Cambrian explosion of consumer agents, B2B agents sort of built on, in part on MCP and
Yeah.
comparing this to something like fintech, right? We had the CEO of Plaid on yesterday,
Mhm.
right? Like everybody in hindsight should have worked on Plaid. Super
Mhm.
valuable. It's a $6 billion company right now. It powers a lot of stuff within finance.
Same with
And
Stripe when
but
Stripe came out.
Stripe, but you can't name that many other sort of like generational companies
Sure.
in fintech infrastructure. Sure,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
there's a bunch, but like no household names. And can see the same thing playing out in the agent space, where maybe there's like almost like a Stripe equivalent in the agent space, or
Mhm.
or a Plaid, but then the best thing you could have done, if you didn't build Plaid, was to build on top of Plaid and build sort of these
Yeah.
novel product experiences.
There are at least 5 or 6 startups that are trying. I actually live with one of them that's called Smithery. That's like decent, but all these are super early.
Yeah.
The main challenge that they're gonna face is that Anthropic is coming up with their own registry. So Anthropic wants to own this.
Mm.
So I don't know if there's a separate plan of MCP that comes out doing this.
Yeah.
So that would be my 2 cents there. It
But
might.
wouldn't one
GitHub,
argument for Smithery, and I'm not familiar with the company, be that other companies don't, if they could ever see themselves competing with Anthropic in any way, they wouldn't want to be reliant on Anthropic's registry. So maybe a new third party that is, kind of a pure play infrastructure player should exist.
totally possible, but it's on the burden of proof is on them, not like by default, whatever the big lab official solution always wins, which is pretty brutal in AI terms, but like the world is not meant to be fair, right?
Yep.
I think one thing I should mention that I neglected to that I do think is very bullish and like will result in a lot more capabilities is that MCP servers can also be clients, and that's a
Mm.
kind of like a technical thing, but that is effectively what is going to enable servers to then become agents and orchestrate agents fleets of other MCP agents on your behalf without you knowing about it.
Mhm.
And so that actually turns these things into much more agentic networks. And we're probably going to see that, like, I would say, like, this is too early right now because MCP is like 4 months old. Um, probably like the end of the year, early next year, I would say, like, this will start to come up because they built that in from the start.
Is there a world where MCP just gets steamrolled by the next generation of models? We kind of saw that with some of the workarounds to context windows, and then Gemini comes out with a million token context window, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, like all those workarounds are kind of irrelevant at this point." How do you think about the durability of MCP over the near term?
MCP actually improves with more context window
Hmm.
utilization. So they're not at odds. There's a
Got
very,
it.
very long-standing debate on context versus RAG, but this
Hmm.
is slightly
Yeah,
different.
rag.
MCP just like is the ecosystem integrations that models really don't have.
Yeah.
Uh, that said, I would say that if there were any challenger to MCP, it would come from Google
Yeah.
because Google has native integrations to Gmail, Calendar,
Sure.
YouTube, what have you. They already launched it and it's
Hmm.
already first party in there. And now MCP come along and so through a threw some noise into their nest.
Well, I mean, Google kind of lost the front end wars with Angular versus React, so there is precedent for another tech company coming up and resetting the standard, right?
Sure. And yeah, I would say that I don't think they should spend time here anyway. So
Yeah,
let's
I agree.
very
Yeah, but
strategically manage it.
maybe we need to
Let's,
polymarket on it or something.
Let's switch gears and
Yeah.
talk about AI 2027.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
love to. I'd love to just let you rant maybe for the next 10 minutes
Yeah,
straight.
yeah.
But initial.
I think so. I think these guys have a really good track record.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know actually if you've interviewed them already.
No, not yet.
I'm sure they'll come on. They seem to be
great.
doing a podcast tour. And I think there's some public service in doing the math and drawing lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what
That's what they did.
that's what situational awareness was. And like I think because we live day to day, we don't really see the year to year as clearly just because we don't spend time on it. And if you just draw lines and you believe that what has happened in the past, the near past is probably going to happen in the near future, you can probably see at least some kind of trend line. The main caution with all these things is that S curves do exist.
Yep.
If I'll just rewind your mind back to like let's say April or May 2020, when every chart on COVID was going like this,
Yep.
and there would be more COVID cases than humans in like by the end of like 2021 or whatever, and that never happens because one, we reacted to it, or you hit invisible asymptotes, as Eugene Wei calls it, where like you didn't account for this because we weren't there yet. Like there's sort of this limiting factor that you didn't run into. But this is relatively near term. It's basically in the next 18 months. And I think like the main geopolitical aspects is kind of interesting. We have no idea what China will do really. Like the main meme on Twitter, which I really like from Tour Texas, is that Xi Jinping just does nothing and then the USA just implodes just
The funniest outcome's the most likely, right? Maybe that's it.
Who knows? But I do think that there are things where like it's really just down to the individual decisions of powerful political figures that we really cannot tell. And then there are things where like if they're basically extrapolations of scaling laws that you can't tell because they're just just like scaling laws that have already been established and you're betting on the end of them, which is less likely to happen. So I think the coding agent commentary is really good. And I think that it starts to talk about hacking and robotics. I think it's all on very, very on balance. I think where it starts to get into a little bit more gray areas like the political and bioweapon stuff.
Yeah, I love the kind of reference to COVID. Everyone thought it was an exponential. It was actually a sigmoid function.
Everything's a sigmoid. It's a series of sigmoids.
Pretty much, right? And and it certainly feels like we're experiencing a sigmoid curve with pre-training, and we're seeing pre-training diminishing returns. It feels like there's still some juice in RL. Are there any next steps that you're excited about? We've heard that program synthesis is kind of a hot area that people are investigating right now. What are you excited about? What do you think is potentially overrated or underrated?
I actually think there's a lot of alpha in spitting out what you call program synthesis, what I call code generation.
Yeah.
We've effectively gone from like single line autocomplete to like a functions autocomplete. And now with like Windsurf and Claude Code and Copilot and Cursor, we're generating basically entire apps and PRs for those apps. And I think being really clear-minded about where those capabilities are and improving them incrementally, you get things like Cursor, which 0 to 200 million ARR in 2 years is crazy.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
So I think a lot of alpha there, but I think like really what people are looking at now is the general measure of agent trajectories. How long can an agent on a broad number of tasks autonomously operate, right?
Yeah.
So Meter, I forget the acronym. It's one of these like research institutes. Meter put out a study of the agentic work that can be done, by a wide range of benchmarks and ran it all the way back to 2019, and basically came up with the idea that the agent horizon for the 50% capability, like 50 percentile capability of human capability, is doubling at between every 3 to 7 months, right? And we're now at an hour. So roughly, you can leave the smartest model that we have, which they measured as Claude 3.7 Sonnet, to run autonomously for an hour and do like what a 50th percentile human can do.
Yeah.
You can obviously bump things up or down in terms of percentile, but the results and the scaling laws don't vary, because the important thing is that they're doubling every 3 to 7 months. And that means you can roughly scale out when are we going to have 1 day autonomy? When are we going to have a week, a year, a month, a month, a year? And that, I think you can kind of set your clocks by and try to think about what products or companies you would build.
It would be so funny if it was an S curve and it maxes out at exactly 8 hours like a human. Like you can only give it one task every single day and it just goes and does that. And it's great. But I don't want to work overnight. Look, I'm maxed out and it's at that for like 2 decades or something. Unlikely, but funny.
Yeah. That'd be an interesting universality, right? Like,
totally.
So for example, a lot of people building agents have independently discovered sleep. The agents have to sleep because they have to compress memories and do like the deep REM thing where they actually turn those into long-term memory. Like the computer agents have to do that and humans have to do that, right?
It's gnarly.
I'm not kidding. Like, go look up for those.
We need an 8 sleep for agents. Maybe it's 8 sleep.
Brian Johnson holding a candle, going like.
I mean, I was I mean, you're joking about 8 sleep for agents. I was joking about like will there be like an alcohol for agents or alcohol for LLMs where you just kind of like throw some randomness in the weights and it gets a little bit crazier, but sometimes it's brilliant, and it's like a lot more bold or something.
The Balmer Peak.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe it's not that. Maybe it's just like, to get true inspiration, you need to just throw some extra chaos, I guess the term would be like higher temperature in the LLM responses, and then run 10,000 of them and you get some more inspiration instead of all coalescing around the same kind of 50th percentile human, like the midwit.
Yeah, that's called sort of mode collapse, where you collapse modal distribution. But like, for those interested, we've moved on basically from temperature to var entropy.
Okay.
And also, I think most people would be interested in like the Anthropic's alignment work on tracing the thoughts of LLMs, which came out recently as well.
Yeah.
There's some really interesting torture you can put on these LLMs where you ask it to say like banana, but then you don't allow it to say banana, and you can see it struggle to like
interesting
find alternatives of saying banana. And
that's so funny. Wow.
But for example, one of the R1 replications, the deep R1 replications, you can also do things like, if you just want it to think more, you can just prevent it from ending its thought and just insert wait or like but I thought something, and it's just like you can force its direction to think another way, and for it to branch out again in terms of its diversity. So I think there's a lot of research here that is super interesting. I'm not sure any of it is going to bear fruit because the big labs are probably like 2 years ahead of us in the open research world there.
Sure.
How do you react? Obviously, the dominant story this week in the wider world is the tariffs and trade war and all that stuff. Do you feel like it's like arguing over pennies as an AI sort of steamroller, just like is about to roll over the entire economy? Do you even give it any attention?
So I heard you guys ask the OpenAI guys about this, and like basically it's a rounding error, right? But obviously the supply chain really matters for AI. I think the US has benefited a ton from the global trade setup that we set up for ourselves effectively after World War II. So blowing that up may not be the best situation if we don't have a more constructive or well-reasoned end state that we want to be in. And I'm not sure we do.
Yeah.
The White House hasn't given us a lot of comfort about where we're going.
My take on it is like, I think AI is probably going to be the main driving force of like serious cultural and economic change over the next few years. And no matter what happens, if it's good, both political parties are going to take credit. And if it's bad, both political parties are going to blame the other political party for whatever happens. And
same as ever.
And really, it's going to
do you worry about the immediate impact on the sort of data center compute supply chain broadly? I know Elon was posting yesterday about how a lot of the conversation will maybe switch from GPU shortage to transformer shortages. Is that top of mind for you at all, or are you more focused on the
transformer, like power transformer?
Power transformers, not the architecture. For reference, the vast majority of transformers are the physical electrical transformers are made abroad, and they're very, very important as we start pulling gigawatts, moving it around the grid to get into these large data centers.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, short term is like, not my department, so that's an easy cop out. I think I think like whatever happens over the next 2 years, like we really don't know. Like a lot of these negotiations, like these are the start of a negotiation, kind of. It's just the way that Trump does it. Anyway, so I don't want to get too much into that. All I will say is like a lot of what I try to guide people towards on AI engineering is utilization of existing capability.
Sure.
Like so much model capability has been unlocked, and it's not evenly distributed in our lives. Like, why do I have Siri that doesn't understand what I want? It's because Apple
hasn't shipped,
hasn't got a shit together. Like, this is not frontier tech. Like, what Elon is dealing with, what Sam Altman's dealing with, what Dario's dealing with, is frontier tech, and that requires giant data centers with all this kind of research. But really, what AI engineers deal with is deployment of existing tech into business and personal lives. And I think there's a lot more to do there. And I think while the big boys figure out your political situation, hopefully we still have enough power to like power the deployment of AI to the rest of the world.
On the topic of Apple, do you think they can afford to fumble the rollout of Apple Intelligence just because of their position as the core consumer hardware provider? Or do you have a strong take there?
Yeah, I mean, so the lock-in of iOS, iMessage, the iDrive, Apple Cloud, whatever they call it, is very, very strong. But there's a time limit on this thing. And for one, like I actually tweeted about this recently. When the iPhone, like I'm much more excited for OpenAI to compete with Apple than with Google. Like OpenAI currently is running the Google playbook. They're looking at they're rating themselves by ChatGPT is like the 6th traffic website in the world. We want to go up, right? But like Google is doing super well, and like actually Google's pretty good. Like we want to have a Google in our lives. But Apple is really fumbling, and they know it. And when OpenAI comes out with the OpenAI phone, I think it will be a serious challenge to Apple because OpenAI's iPhone, I like the will just be smarter. It.
Yeah.
And like everyone would try it, and it will be the first serious challenger to the Apple iPhone since Steve Jobs presented it.
That's a great take.
And people already have like such an extreme willingness to try new AI hardware that when the dominant lab comes out with something, I think every single person we know is at least buying it, right? If it's $1,000, sure, I'll take it.
I think it's just like the people who want to get serious about hardware. They've just been like the small guys, like the rabbits and let's just call it the humanes. But like if you get someone with the resources of OpenAI, I really want to see if they take a real run at it. I mean, they have chats with Jony Ive. They've confirmed that it's in the works. I don't know if how serious it is. They could still kill it, but I hope to God that they actually challenge Apple, and Apple will get its shit together in response.
I completely agree.
Love it.
Well, yeah, that's a fantastic take. I'm looking forward to trying the OpenAI phone. We'll see it, and there'll probably be an XAI phone too. I mean, it might be a new dawn in consumer hardware driven by artificial intelligence. But thanks for stopping by. This was fantastic. Well, we'd love to have you back. This is such a fun conversation.
Can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, and everyone go check out the latest podcast he just dropped, Latent Space.
Yes,
do it. Cheers.
Talk to you soon. Bye.